Today on Chainlinked, Polygon co-founder Sandeep Nailwal joins me to talk about Polygon's $1 billion funding announcement for advancing scaling solutions on Polygon. Plus, a look at Polygon Studios and how that initiative is working to grow digital culture. We'll also speak with Ajit Tripathi, head of institutional business at the DeFi giant Aave, to find out what enterprises and major financial institutions care about when they're looking at Web3 and DeFi partnerships. Chainlinked is a pocket-sized podcast series looking at the many applications of Chainlink blockchain oracles across global enterprise, the blockchain industry, and emerging tech projects. We break down the news and frame Chainlink technical innovations and integrations for any listener. My name is Dr. Andy Boyan. You can call me Andy, and I'll be your host. Sandeep Nailwal is a co-founder of Polygon, a protocol for building and connecting Ethereum-compatible blockchain networks. Polygon provides fast and low gas transactions to allow Ethereum-based apps to work on Polygon. Chainlink oracles are native on Polygon and have been instrumental in providing secure data for DeFi to grow there. Polygon recently announced some major news and has a few really novel gaming initiatives going on. So I wanted to bring Sandeep on to learn a little bit more about what's happening on Polygon lately. Hey, Sandeep, welcome to Chainlinked.
Hey, thanks, Andy, for having me here.
Oh, thank you for joining me. I very much appreciate you taking the time. But let's start with your huge acquisition news.
So I will basically take a step back and say that, the Polygon, to just re-emphasize what's the vision of Polygon, right? So Polygon is supposed to be a multi-chain Ethereum scaling platform. What that means is that how Polygon intends to build itself is to build a series of various different kind of secondary layer. I don't want to call layer 2. There's already a lot of debate about what is layer 2 and not layer 2.
Right.
It's basically a secondary layer blockchains on top of Ethereum, which all connect back to Ethereum and then basically try to settle into Ethereum so that you have these layer 2 or secondary layer scaling on top of Ethereum. So this current acquisition is in lieu of that only. This acquisition demonstrates our particular thesis, which is evolving around zero knowledge technology. Mm-hmm. What we kind of intend to do and what we have zeroed in is that, ultimately for Ethereum scalability and larger Web3 scalability, zero knowledge technology is going to be the fundamental part of it. That was our thesis. And in the last 4 or 5 months, we have done a lot of things on the zero knowledge technology, acquired a lot of talent and a lot of other things. And this Hermez acquisition that you see, the huge $250 million acquisition, is actually the tip of the iceberg. That's the alpha leak.
When Polygon launched, it was to provide an immediate scaling solution and solve a critical problem. Can you talk about that process?
Polygon was previously Matic Network. Matic Networks was focusing on one particular scaling solution that was Plasma. Kind of decided that pure Plasma will never work, which is kind of the current agreement within the industry that Plasma singularly doesn't exist, doesn't work. And we pivoted that we'll create a proof of stake hybrid Plasma, which is a multi-operator Plasma, which will run on proof of stake. And we actually delivered that solution, made it production ready, and made it available to the industry. And that's what picked up this huge traction. If you see the larger philosophy of Polygon, you will see that this particular solution is a immediate solution. Right now, whatever is the best solution for Ethereum scaling, this solution is that. But then you already see there are 3-4 solutions we have launched. So Polygon POS chain is our current existing solution, which has picked up a lot of traction. The second solution, which is picking up some traction, is Polygon SDK, which basically allows you to create your app chains on top of Ethereum. Then we also launched 2 months back Polygon Avail. It is data availability solution. Basically for layer 2, it is required. So currently all layer 2s are putting their data back to Ethereum, which is very costly. We are set to provide a data availability solution with which the layer 2s can put their data onto this data availability solution and dispute resolution on Ethereum. So that is the third solution from our side. And this fourth one for this entire suite is the Polygon Hermez solution, right? And Polygon Hermez is also very interesting and we intend to talk more about it. It's basically the first ever zero knowledge solution with zero knowledge rollup, which is decentralized. It can be run by multiple validators and they can coordinate between them to run this rollup.
I really like the way this is framed, where Polygon proof of stake is an immediate solution to Ethereum scaling needs, but then now it's time to grow is something that I read. And so these acquisitions as part of a growth strategy, but it wasn't just 250 million. There's a lot more funding going on. The number I saw was $1 billion for other initiatives and support around that. That's a lot of money. So like, is that the end goal, is just with all that funding, is to build out users and applications and a variety of different services that people can come in and build on?
As Polygon team, we have been very conservative in preserving the Polygon tokens. Like we did not do a VC round and all that. So the foundation was not that much diluted and all that. So it preserved a lot of tokens. And then now, as the responsibility towards the community, the foundation is deploying those tokens for the long-term growth of the ecosystem. So as I said, that $1 billion is purely for zero knowledge technology. We are doing some other efforts. They will have their parallel budgets. But this $1 billion, which would be roughly 6 to 7% of our Polygon total supply, this will be purely used for building these zero knowledge solutions within the Polygon ecosystem, because we think that that's the real thing. Like, that will, in next 12 to 18 months, we believe that the real super cycle of crypto is coming. That will come with zero knowledge solutions.
Can you touch for a minute on what you see as the real, maybe there's competing values with ZK or zero knowledge technology? I hear some people talk about it as a solution for scale. I hear some people talk about it as a solution for anonymity and privacy. How do you see those two sort of things with this technology?
The core fundamental is with zero knowledge technology is that you have a set of inputs and you can provide an output and prove that these inputs would have gone through a particular process of execution, some business logic, and the output is this. That's the fundamental tenet, and that you can use for both privacy as well as achieving scale, especially in the context of layer 2s. Because what you can do is, let's consider the scale part. What you can do over there is that on the layer 2, you can execute a particular code. But then on layer 1, that is on Ethereum, you can submit the inputs and the outputs, and the layer 2 will be able to justify that the output that you have is perfectly fine and it was executed correctly. These are also called validity proofs. And this is also one of the biggest advantages of zero knowledge rollups or ZK rollups, is that ZK rollups rely on the validity proof. So that means that every 10 minutes, generally the duration is around 10 minutes. So zero knowledge rollups basically submit the validity proof back to Ethereum every 10 minutes. And once the validity proof is submitted back, then whatever has happened on layer 2 is fully ratified. That means if you wanted to exit your funds, you can exit in 10 minutes. It can even further be brought down basis the adoption and all that.
One of the things you mentioned about proof of stake Polygon network is that people are finding it's a great place for gaming and NFTs. I've seen stuff coming out about Polygon Studios. It's a branding initiative coming out of Polygon that seems really interesting and exciting. There's a lot of streaming and sorts of things happening. Can you tell us a little bit about what that Studios brand is doing?
Polygon Studios is basically Polygon's effort to create or to kind of consolidate Polygon's leadership on the NFT space. So essentially, even though people see Polygon's rise and it closely corroborates with the rise of DeFi on Polygon, where there were hundreds of protocols and people using DeFi projects to yield farm and whatnot, not many people know that Polygon is by far the leader in the NFT and gaming side of things after Ethereum. And so much so that if you talk to 10 different games on the blockchain side, like 10 different blockchain games, I'm pretty sure that roughly 6 to 7 will tell you that they are building on Polygon or are exploring Polygon.
I know Aave is there now. They use Chainlink as well. Aave been doing portals with Chainlink VRF for months now.
Absolutely. And there are so many projects like that, and many of them use Polygon, Chainlink VRF that I know. For randomness, I think it's the most popular solution right now amongst the games. The Polygon Studios is our effort to consolidate Polygon's leadership in that particular region. And that's why we are doing with that. With Polygon Studios, we have a $100 million fund, which is separate from the zero knowledge fund I was talking about. And it is purely focusing on incubating and growing teams, gaming teams, especially from the Web2 side of things on Polygon. Like as I already told you, currently I'm in Venice and I was invited here by Dolce & Gabbana, which is one of the bigger luxury brands globally. They are launching their summer spring collection with NFTs on Polygon. And there are multiple such brands which are doing this. To have exclusive focus on these things, we carved out a special division, which is Polygon Studios. There are like so many cool things are happening. The people whom we are onboarding as advisors and things like that, it's absolutely crazy. Yeah, I'm very excited for this.
That's awesome. I know in the play to earn space or the DeFi gaming space, GameFi, what you really need is players. So at some point, there's game development, but you really need players to test your games and test your logic and see what those network effects are. That's why I was really interested to see Polygon Studios as a particular brand that is doing stuff like streaming and working with influencers. I love the development, love game development and that thinking, but also that next step to see that and really reaching out to these other brands and players and people. Really fascinating initiative. Sandeep, it's been awesome to talk to you, get to know what's going on with Polygon, hear some of the new stuff. I very much appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thanks for having me here.
Aave is one of the largest decentralized liquidity protocol platforms in DeFi. A flagship Chainlink Oracle user, Aave has been a leader in security, user experience, and has been working with various traditional finance institutions as part of their Aave Arc product. I got to speak to Aave's head of institutional business, Ajit Tripathi, at SmartCon this year, a few weeks ago, about traditional finance and DeFi. And so I wanted to bring him back on to talk with me on the podcast to get an update and find out what makes traditional finance institutions tick when it comes to DeFi. Ajit, how are you?
Very well, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to talk to you again. Let's dive in. What are some of the core reasons you're hearing that non-crypto institutions are thinking about DeFi and why do they care about it?
Well, there are a few reasons, right? So the first is obviously the opportunity to generate a return, right? So to essentially earn a yield on some of the DeFi protocols. The second is to have access to this incredible area of innovation. Many financial institutions are aware that if they do not participate in this and do not really, make it part of their core strategy, then at some point they could be disrupted by this new technology and an entire decentralized ecosystem that's coming on, being built on public blockchain. And the third is, I think there are lots of individuals within these financial institutions that are really excited about the technology.
I feel like that's really different than a few years ago, the 2017, 2018 era, where the focus on enterprise blockchain was that this technology is going to be a really important long-term activity. And so we're going to get into it, but who knows what that's going to look like in the short term. Right now, it sounds like, well, this is going to be a long-term thing, but also there's these right now reasons to get into it for yield. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah. I come from enterprise blockchain, so I spent 3 years on some of the biggest enterprise blockchain platforms like VTrade and Comgo. Coming from enterprise Ethereum, we were always pretty clear that private blockchains are the intranet, and at some point they have to connect to Web3 or the wider public Ethereum blockchain. So I think that future is now starting to happen, and that's tremendously exciting. The technology has moved forward quite a bit. And then in DeFi and with products like Chainlink, I think, and Aave, we have kind of proven the point that there is a lot more value in the public blockchain ecosystem than any consortium or a single financial institution can create within their firewall.
A few years ago, all over crypto in our industry, it was that enterprise is coming, institutions are coming. I feel like that narrative is changing a little bit, and I hear much more of institutions are here. Enterprise is here. They're not all announced yet. Sometimes they're still figuring out exactly what it's going to be. Have we moved past that? Institutions are coming, and are they here now?
When you see BNY Mellon make a relatively large investment in a company like Fireblocks, which is entirely crypto focused, that they are here. But there is still the far end of the traditional financial institutions, especially market infrastructure operators, the likes of London Stock Exchange, and then also some of the heavily regulated retail banks that are still kind of exploring the space. But for the rest of for asset managers, endowments, for family offices, just about everyone else is here. So, and even in the retail banking space, now you see BBVA and others essentially starting to offer crypto custody. So yeah, they are here, and it's still very, very early, tip of the iceberg, but the iceberg is coming. We can see that happening, especially with Aave.
For some of these institutions that are still exploring and figuring out exactly how they're going to roll out, what are the challenges that they're facing when they enter into DeFi and that the typical person might not understand? So like from a crypto industry perspective, what do they have to overcome to actually really deliver it?
One of the things that became very clear from all of the inbound conversations with institutions is that, KYC and AML compliance is sort of the first barrier for institutions in the US and other jurisdictions that have AML equivalents with the United States. For us, the mission has always been to enable access to DeFi and this infrastructure for everyone. So we finally decided to create a platform where there is a role for regulated intermediaries to offer KYC and AML compliance as a service. Now, the other concern that institutions often have is insurance or smart contract risk, and there's a bit of headline risk around smart contracts. And I think there are protocols, very few protocols like Aave, that have kind of maintained a very strong culture across the community of security. And that's kind of, is really working out well for us as we launch Aave Arc. The third, I think there is a learning curve because, as I said, this is a new way of interacting with technology where you're sort of interacting with a smart contract that's governed by a widely distributed token holder community. So I think there is a bit of a learning curve, and which is why Stanny, myself, Jordan, and a few of other team members, we spend an extraordinary amount of time on essentially information education and then engaging very actively with policymakers and regulators.
Let's say I'm someone at a hedge fund or an office of an endowment somewhere, and I'm considering taking on DeFi as an initiative for my office to jump into. What would you say to somebody like me as I'm preparing to really take that on?
Look beyond the 4% is what I would say, right? So I think there are solutions in the market that focus on like a fixed yield and, oh yeah, you can have 4%. But I think that doesn't really create the opportunity for institutions, right? The reason we deployed Arc in the way we're doing it is because that sort of brings the full power of DeFi to institutions. Institutions can participate in governance. Institutions can sort of have that entire Web3 experience. Institutions will benefit from all the innovation that the Aave community and, Chainlink community and others are doing around NFTs, oracles, all of the good stuff that we're building. I think institutions kind of need to think beyond the headline 4%, because think about what's really going on in DeFi, right? It's the permissionless innovation that's the big opportunity, because now in Aave, just about anyone with talent and a good idea from anywhere can contribute, and they don't have to be hired by Aave and that sort of thing. They don't have to go to Harvard. They don't have to get a job with a major investment bank. They don't have to work with Aave or anything. They can essentially contribute. And that sort of meritocracy, that sort of access to talent and innovation is impossible to compete with. So I think institutions should think beyond the 4% and really look to access DeFi in its full power. And that's kind of what Aave Arc is looking to enable.
Ajit, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you taking the time again, coming on and having a talk with me. I hope we get to talk with you again soon.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Andy.
Thanks for listening and being part of the Chainlink community. Now, please help me grow the Chainlinked podcast and the entire Chainlink ecosystem. Subscribe, rate, review, share this podcast. Help me out and help the algorithm robots spread Chainlinked and the Chainlink ecosystem to more crypto-curious people. Next, follow me and Chainlink Today on Twitter. I'm at Andy Boyan, and you can get updates on the podcast at Chainlink Today. There are friends helping distribute the pod. Finally, join the official Chainlink Discord and Telegram communities. Many community members, including myself, hang out there, so you can chat with me about what you want to hear more of on the next Chainlinked. Again, thank you so much for supporting me and this podcast by listening. I'll catch you guys next time.